My name is Tom Halverson, and the night my wife told me she was taking my stepdaughter to spend Christmas with her ex-husband, she slammed the kitchen door so hard the windows rattled. She pointed a red-polished finger at me and said clear as a church bell, "Lily needs her real father. If you don't like it, divorce me." I didn't argue. I wiped sawdust off my hands, opened my old laptop at the kitchen table, and finally accepted the Japan transfer I'd been turning down for years. 1 week later, she came home screaming on my front porch, pounding on the door like she still owned the place. Back then, she really did think she owned everything. It didn't start with the screaming. It started like a regular gray Tuesday in Cedar Falls, Iowa. Went off the River Salt, on the roads, folks hunched in their coats, just trying to get through another December workday. I'd put in a full shift at the paper mill, stayed late to quiet a motor that wouldn't stop humming, and swung by Hy-Vee for milk and a rotisserie chicken. When I walked into the house, it smelled like cinnamon and pine. The little artificial tree in the corner was already lit, colored lights blinking in the front window. That was Lily's touch. She was 10 and loved Christmas like it was a full-time job. She came sliding into the hallway in sock feet. "Daddy Tom, did you fix the dollhouse roof?" she asked. I held up the small wooden dollhouse I'd been working on in the basement. Marcy had found it beat up at a yard sale. I'd spent 3 evenings sanding and gluing it back together after work. "Give it a try," I said. Lily leaned on the little pink roof with both hands. It didn't move. "I told Mom you could fix it," she said proudly. "You always fix everything." I wish that had been true. In the kitchen, Marcy stood at the stove with her back to me, stirring a pot of sauce. Her shoulders were tight. I'd learned over the years that you could read her mood just by how high they sat. "Hey," I said, putting the milk in the fridge. "We got the Christmas bonus today. It's not huge, but it'll cover that bike and then some." She didn't look up. "We need to talk," she said. Those 4 words are never about anything good. "Okay," I said carefully. "About what?" She turned off the burner, set the spoon down, and faced me. She had on a nice blouse lipstick, still perfect from work. It struck me that she dressed more for someone else than for a night at home. "I talked to Rick," she said. "Rick, her ex-husband? The man who missed birthdays and parent-teacher conferences but always had a story about why." About what I asked, though my stomach had already started to knot. "About Christmas," she said, like it ought to be obvious. "He invited us to the cabin this year. He wants to make up for lost time with Lily. She needs her real father in her life, Tom." "Marcy, we already have plans," I said. "Church service, the dinner at St. Luke's, your parents." She cut me off with a little wave of her hand. "We have habits," she said, "not plans. You and your church hall, potlucks, and folding chairs. Lily deserves a real Christmas with a big cabin and a real tree and her real dad." She hit that word like a hammer. I let that sink in for a second. "I thought I was part of that," I said. "I'm the one here. I'm the one reading to her, taking her to the dentist, showing up at school." Her mouth twisted. "You're the stepfather," she said flatly. "Don't make this about you. You knew what you were signing up for. Rick is her actual father. She needs that bond. Maybe if you weren't so simple about everything, you'd understand." Something small and quiet broke inside my chest. Not a dramatic snap, more like an old board finally giving way. "And where do I fit in?" I asked. She shrugged. "You don't not this time. We're going to the cabin for a week. We leave on the 23rd. If you can't handle that, you can file for divorce. Or I will." She said it like she was reading a line off a script she'd rehearsed all afternoon. From the living room, Lily called Mom. "Are we watching the Christmas movie tonight?" Marcy didn't answer. Her eyes stayed on me, waiting for a reaction. I'd given her plenty over the years, pleading, arguing, explaining myself like a teenager caught breaking curfew. This time I just stood there. I thought about the email from Tokyo sitting flagged in my inbox. Final offer, plant maintenance supervisor, Japan. I'd turned them down 3 times because Marcy didn't want to leave Iowa or her salon or her parents' house 10 minutes away. I thought about my father, who'd worked 35 years at the same factory and used to tell me, "Don't let anybody treat you like you're lucky just to be standing in the room." "I see," I said. My voice sounded calmer than I felt. "When did you tell Lily?" "Yesterday," she said. "She's excited. She wants to see the snow at the cabin. Rick's picking us up." Of course he was. "Okay," I said. "I'll stay out of your way." Marcy blinked. That wasn't the line she was expecting. "That's it," she demanded. You're not going to yell, call me selfish, threaten to call a lawyer. I shook my head. No, I said, not tonight. She huffed and turned back to the stove, muttering something about me being spineless. I walked out of the kitchen past the smell of sauce and the stack of unopened mail on the counter and into the living room. Lily had lined up the little wooden family in front of the dollhouse. The dad figure was closest to the door. Movie time, I asked. She grinned. Can we do the black and white one with the angel again? It's a Wonderful Life, I said. Yeah, we can do that. She curled up under my arm with a blanket, her head on my shoulder. On the screen, George Bailey's whole life played out in front of him, all the little sacrifices and quiet moments that nobody else seemed to notice. I watched, but I was thinking about how many times I'd said no to that job overseas, how many nights I'd fixed things in this house thinking we were building something together. Halfway through, Lily fell asleep. I carried her to bed, tucked the quilt up under her chin, and stood there a minute listening to her steady breathing. Downstairs, the house felt different. Empty somehow, even with Marcy in the bedroom and the TV still murmuring. I sat at the kitchen table, pulled my laptop toward me, and opened the email from Tokyo. Hi, Ken, I typed. If the position is still available, I'd like to accept. The cursor blinked at the end of the sentence. I read it twice, heard my dad's voice again, and hit send. The little whoosh of the email going out sounded louder than it should have in that small kitchen. I didn't pack that night. I didn't leave a note. I just sat there for a while, listening to the furnace kick on and the ice maker clunk to life, the ordinary noises of a house that suddenly wasn't really mine. I didn't know it yet, but that quiet click of the send button was the first step toward the day Marcy would stand in front of a judge, red-faced and furious, while the truth finally caught up with her. When the plane touched down at Haneda, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: quiet. Not peace exactly, more like the quiet after a storm, when the air still smells like rain, and you're not sure if it's really over. Tokyo was bright even at night, full of lights and motion, but none of it belonged to me. I checked into a modest apartment, my company arranged tiny kitchen, a single narrow bed, and a window looking out onto a street where businessmen hurried past with black umbrellas. The next morning I walked to the plant with my supervisor, a man named Kenji. Tall, soft-spoken, always smiling politely. He bowed slightly when he introduced me to the crew. They bowed back. Respect. Simple, automatic, no strings attached. It felt strange after so many years of walking on eggshells at home. People here work hard, Kenji said as we put on our safety gear. But we also take care of each other. You'll fit in. I nodded, but the truth was, I felt like a ghost drifting through someone else's life. During my first week, I kept checking my phone. There were no messages from Marcy. That part didn't surprise me. She could go weeks pretending I didn't exist if it suited her. But Lily, I kept waiting for something. A question, a picture, anything. So I sent the first message. Hey kiddo, hope you're having fun. I'm in Japan now, miss you. No reply. I tried again a day later. Sent you a little gift. It'll probably take a week to reach you. Love you. Still nothing. A few nights later, I bought a small charm from a convenience store, a little wooden fox, a symbol of protection. I boxed it up and mailed it to Cedar Falls. It cost more than I expected, but I didn't care. Walking back to my apartment, I passed a family father, mother-daughter laughing as the girl held both their hands and jumped over every crack in the sidewalk. I stopped for a moment watching them disappear around the corner. That's when the guilt hit me, the heavy kind that sits on your chest like someone's pressing a hand against you. Had I abandoned Lily? Had I really been any better than Rick disappearing when things got hard? I tried to shake it off, telling myself I needed time-space clarity. But guilt has a way of creeping in like winter drafts through old windows. Every night I checked my email, and every night it was empty. One Saturday I met a younger coworker named Daiichi for ramen. He noticed me checking my phone again and again. Waiting for someone, he asked. I hesitated. My daughter or my stepdaughter? He nodded. Complicated. You could say that. He studied me with the same quiet patience I'd seen in the plant. Family matters are never simple, he said gently, but truth always shows itself. I didn't know then how right he would be. The twist came the following Tuesday. I was sitting on my apartment balcony eating vending machine soba when I opened Facebook, something I rarely did. At the top of the feed was a post from a neighbor back in Iowa. A photo. Marcy and Lily standing in front of a large cabin covered in snow. She was wearing a red sweater I recognized because I'd bought it for her last Christmas, and next to them was Rick, her ex-husband, wearing my Christmas sweater, the old green one with the stitched pine tree that Lily loved because she said it looked happy. They all looked happy, a picture-perfect family. Family Christmas at the cabin, the caption read with 2 heart emojis. I stared at that photo until my food went cold. Something stung, not just jealousy, not just betrayal. It was the realization that she had looked me in the eye, told me Lily needed her real father, and then stepped right into the life she always wanted, without me. I zoomed in on the picture, and that's when the second punch hit. Lily wasn't smiling. Not a real one. Not the crinkly eye grin she always gave me. She looked confused, a little lost, like a kid who'd been told to stand still for a picture she didn't want to take. That did something to me. Broke something and fixed something all at once. I closed Facebook and rubbed my face with both hands. I could feel the old guilt turning into something else resolve. But the worst was still coming. 2 days later, I was in the break room when Daichi walked in holding his phone. "Tom," he said hesitantly, "is your last name Halverson?" "Yeah," I said slowly. He turned his screen toward me. He'd found a legal notice posted on a public county website, a divorce filing. Filed by Marcy Halverson. Reason abandonment. Date 3 days after I left for Japan. My chest felt hollow. "She's saying you left with no intention to return," Daichi said gently, "and that the house and all assets should go to her." I blinked at the screen. "She knew I was taking the job," I whispered. "She watched me send the email. She practically pushed me out the door." Daichi nodded slowly. Sometimes people choose lies when truth is inconvenient. I sank into the chair beside me. She wasn't just happy without me. She was trying to erase me entirely. I opened my email app again. Nothing from Lily, nothing from anyone. My phone buzzed a notification from the tracking app. The charm I mailed to Lily had been delivered 2 days ago. No response. Of course not. Marcy must have intercepted it. I felt anger for the first time, not the hot yelling kind, but the cold, deliberate kind that settles low and deep. I looked out the window at the narrow street below. The snow had started falling soft and silent. Tokyo was busy as ever, but inside me a kind of clarity formed. I wasn't going back to Iowa to fix my marriage. I was going back to save a little girl who deserved the truth, and to make sure her mother finally faced it. I booked my return flight that night. I landed back in Iowa on a cold, windburned morning, the kind where the air bites your cheeks the moment you step out of the airport doors. Waterloo Regional was quiet, just a few families in boots and puffy coats hauling luggage over dirty snow. No one was there to greet me. That was fine. I wasn't ready to be seen anyway. I'd planned ahead and booked a small room at the VFW Post over on Franklin Street. It wasn't fancy, just a bed, a dresser, and a window looking out over the parking lot, but it felt solid, honest, like the kind of place you stay when you've got work to do. I set my bag down and stood there a moment, breathing in the smell of old wood and coffee that had been brewed since sunrise. A veteran with a buzz cut nodded at me in the hallway. "Haven't seen you in a while, Tom," he said. "Everything all right?" "Getting there," I said. "Just need a few days to sort some things out." He gave me that look older men give each other when they know something's gone wrong, but they're decent enough not to pry. That afternoon, I drove past my old house. The driveway was empty. The Christmas wreath was still on the door, tilted a little to one side. In the front window, the little artificial tree still blinked its colored lights. For a moment, it took everything in me not to pull the truck over, walk up the steps, and knock. Instead, I kept driving. I needed information before I needed confrontation. My first stop was Black Hawk Credit Union. The teller, a woman named Denise who'd known me for years, blinked when she saw me. "Tom, I thought you moved overseas." "Not permanently," I said. She lowered her voice. "Your wife came in here trying to pull all the money from your joint account. Made a fuss when we told her she couldn't without your signature. Wanted to talk to the manager, then the board. We had to ask her to leave." "I figured," I said. "Did she say why?" Denise sighed. "She said you abandoned the family and she needed the funds for emergency expenses. But you know the rules." I nodded. "Yeah, I know how it works." She slipped me a printout of the last 3 months of activity, my own transactions on one page, her attempted withdrawals on the other. "Thanks, Denise," I said. "You take care of yourself, all right? You look tired." "I'm working on it." My next stop was Hy-Vee. I wasn't hungry, but I needed to see it, the place where half the town gathered, where rumors grew legs. I pushed a cart slowly down the produce aisle, listening. People in small towns don't whisper as quietly as they think. Herdy ran off with somebody in Japan. Poor Marcy left with the girl and all those bills. Just like her first husband, she sure can pick 'em. I rounded the corner and nearly bumped into the cashier, a woman named Sandy, who'd rung up my groceries 1,000 times. Her eyes widened. Lord Tom, so she was lying. She shook her head. She told us you skipped town with a woman half your age after blowing the bonus on yourself. I let out a slow breath. Not true. I figured. She crossed her arms. You always struck me as steady. She's been in here 3 times this week complaining about everything. I finally stopped asking how she was. I appreciated that more than I said. Thanks, Sandy. She's going to have a fit when she realizes you're back, she said. Be careful. That night I sat on the VFW bed with all the receipts and evidence spread out in front of me. Financial records, screenshots, copies of emails, the printed divorce filing with the word abandonment staring up at me like an accusation. But the thing that hit me hardest wasn't a legal document. It was the drawing. The one Lily had made for me before they left, the picture of us holding hands next to a Christmas tree. I'd kept it in my bag. I set it on the bed and just looked at it. Did she think I left because of her? Did she think I didn't want to be her dad anymore? That thought nearly knocked the wind out of me. I called the school the next morning. The front desk transferred me to the counselor, a woman named Mrs. Callahan. Tom, she said, relieved. I'm so glad to hear from you. You've talked to Lily, I asked. Yes, she's confused. That word again. She asked where you went. I told her sometimes grown-ups have complicated things to work out, but that you love her. She cried. She said her mom told her you chose Japan over her. My grip tightened around the phone. Did she really say that? Yes, I'm sorry, Tom. The nausea and anger mixed in my throat. Thank you, I said quietly. That means more than you know. When the call ended, I sat there a long time staring at the floor. That was the moment the doubt evaporated. Whatever guilt I'd felt about leaving was gone. I hadn't failed that Lily Marcy had lied to her. And I wasn't going to let that stand. I spent the next 2 days building my case. My old friend Eric Jensen, who I'd known since high school, was now a lawyer, working out of a little office behind the Casey's gas station. He met me on his lunch break, looked through my binder, and let out a low whistle. She really stepped in it, he said. Trying to sell the house, filing abandonment 3 days after you left, blocking your contact with Lily, the judge won't like any of it. So what do I do? You file a response, he said, and you show up to the hearing. Her attorney will expect you to be out of the country. That's your advantage. Will it be enough to protect Lily? He nodded. If what you told me is true, and it sure looks like it, this will go your way. He closed the binder and slid it back toward me. Just stay calm, Tom. Don't confront her. Let the court handle it. That was the hardest part, staying calm. That night I sat in the VFW parking lot looking at the courthouse across the river. Snow was starting to fall again, big flakes drifting in the streetlights. I thought about the little girl sleeping somewhere across town, probably hugging that stuffed fox I'd won for her at the county fair 2 summers back. I thought about how she'd looked in that cabin photo, not smiling, not really. I made up my mind. I wasn't coming back to reclaim a marriage. I was coming back to reclaim a daughter. 2 mornings later, wearing my best shirt and my old brown Carhartt jacket, I walked up the courthouse steps with the binder under my arm. I reached the top, pulled open the heavy glass door, and stepped inside. The Black Hawk County Courthouse always looked a little intimidating, even on warm days. But that morning, with the sky low and gray and the wind slicing across the river, it felt like walking into a battlefield. My boots echoed on the tiles as I made my way down the long hallway toward courtroom 2B. Eric, my attorney, was already there, sitting on a bench outside with a stack of papers in his lap. When he saw me, he stood and offered a firm handshake. You ready? He asked. As ready as I'll ever be. He nodded, adjusting his tie. Marcy's not here yet. She probably thinks you're still in Japan. That'll work in our favor. We walked into the courtroom. The heat was turned too high and the old radiators hissed in the corners. A few people sat on the benches, the usual mix of locals dealing with traffic, fines, custody disputes, and property disagreements. Small-town courtrooms are never empty. I took my seat at the respondents' table. The judge wasn't in yet. Neither was Marcy. For a moment, I let myself breathe. My hands rested on the binder, my evidence, my truth. It felt heavier than it looked. The door opened behind me. Heels clicked across the floor. Marcy walked in wearing a long red wool coat with a fur-lined collar and boots that looked brand new, probably a Christmas gift to herself. Her hair was curled, makeup perfect, lips bright as a warning signal. Right behind her was her lawyer, a younger guy in an expensive suit with a smug smile plastered on his face. Marcy scanned the room with casual confidence until her eyes landed on me. She froze. It was only a second, but I saw everything I needed in that moment: shock, irritation, and a flash of panic she tried to smother under a tight smile. Well, she said loudly enough for people around us to hear. Look who finally decided to show up. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Eric leaned toward me. Don't rise to the bait. Let her talk. The judge entered, then a stern woman with steel gray hair and glasses perched low on her nose. Everyone stood. When we all sat again, she shuffled through a file. Case number 24-1781. Halverson versus Halverson. Divorce and custody matters. Her eyes moved from one table to the other. Mr. Halverson, I wasn't expecting you. The petitioner's filing claimed you had left the country indefinitely. Marcy folded her hands primly. Your Honor, that's what I believed. He abandoned. Eric rose. Objection, Your Honor. My client did not abandon anyone. The judge raised a hand. We'll get to that. Then she looked at me. Mr. Halverson, since you are present, the court will hear your side. Marcy's lawyer jumped in. Your Honor, the petitioner maintains that. But the judge cut him off. Not yet, Mr. Langford. Sit. He did. The judge turned to me again. Mr. Halverson, proceed. I stood. My palms were sweating, but my voice stayed steady. I left the country because my wife told me she and Lily were spending Christmas with her ex-husband, I said. She told me Lily needed her real father, and that if I didn't like it, I could file for divorce. A murmur spread through the room. I continued. I accepted a job transfer to Japan after turning it down multiple times for the sake of this family. I sent messages and gifts to Lily. Nothing reached her. I found out later they had been blocked or intercepted. I opened the binder and slid a stack of printed emails onto the table. These are timestamps and tracking confirmations. And these I added. Another set of papers are attempts by the petitioner to withdraw all funds from our joint account and sell the marital home without my signature. Marcy's face reddened. That's not how it happened, she sputtered. Mrs. Halverson, the judge said sharply, you will have your turn. Eric handed me another document. I passed it forward. And this is the divorce filing I said submitted 3 days after I left claiming abandonment. The judge studied the paperwork with a disapproving frown. I stepped back. Your Honor, I didn't abandon my family. I was pushed out and then replaced. Marcy slammed her hands on the table. Oh, please, he's lying. He left with some woman in Japan. Ask anyone. The judge looked mildly amused. Is that so? Before Marcy's lawyer could stop her, she said, yes. Ask the people at Hy-Vee, they know. That was the opening Eric had been waiting for. Funny you say that, he said, standing. Your Honor, we have a witness sitting in the back. Everyone turned as Sandy Hy-Vee cashier Sandy stood up clutching her purse. The judge nodded. Ma'am stepped forward. Sandy walked up, cleared her throat, and said plainly, Your Honor, I've known Tom and Marcy for years. Marcy told everyone that Tom ran off with a younger woman and left her with all the bills. But that never sounded right to me. And, well, seeing him here proves she wasn't telling the truth. A quiet gasp swept the benches. Marcy's jaw tightened. That she doesn't know anything, she snapped. But the damage was done. The judge leaned back, hands steepled. Mrs. Halverson, you filed for abandonment 3 days after your husband left for a documented work transfer. You attempted to liquidate assets without the proper authorization. You blocked communications between the child and her stepfather, whom she clearly views as a parental figure. Do you understand how serious this is? Marcy opened her mouth, but nothing came out. The judge continued, based on the evidence, the court sees a pattern of dishonesty and manipulation. Marcy's lawyer tried to salvage it. Your Honor, surely we can. No, the judge said, we cannot. She signed a document with a sharp stroke of her pen. My ruling is as follows. Temporary primary decision-making authority goes to Mr. Halverson. Mrs. Halverson is ordered to cease any attempts to sell the property. Financial misconduct will be reviewed by an auditor. A guardian ad litem will be assigned to determine the child's best interests. and Mrs. Halverson will repay any funds withdrawn improperly. Marcy's face went from pink to crimson. This is ridiculous. He's not even her real father, she shouted. The judge's eyes hardened. Sometimes real fathers are the ones who stay, Mrs. Halverson. Court is adjourned. The gavel struck. Chairs scraped. People whispered. Marcy stormed out with her lawyer chasing after her. And then something small broke the noise. Daddy Tom. I turned. Lily stood just inside the doorway with a school counselor behind her. Her eyes were wet, but her smile was the real thing. She ran to me and wrapped her arms around my waist. I knew you didn't leave me, she whispered. I couldn't speak. I just held her one hand cradling the back of her head while the courtroom emptied around us. That hug was the moment everything changed. I wasn't the man who left. I was Dad. For a week after the hearing, the house was quiet in a way it had never been when Marcy lived there. Not empty, just peaceful. I'd moved back in temporarily under the court's order, while the guardian ad litem conducted her evaluation. Lily stayed every other night, and when she wasn't there, I still found myself checking the hallway for her small footsteps. That girl had a way of filling a home even when she wasn't talking. She hummed while brushing her hair. She tapped her fingers when she did homework. She whispered to the old wooden dollhouse I'd fixed, moving the tiny family figures into different rooms, like she was giving them a better life inside miniature walls. The first night she slept over, she'd crawled into bed with me around 2 a.m. Didn't say a word, just wrapped an arm around my chest like she was afraid I might vanish. Still here, I whispered into the dark. She nodded against my shoulder and didn't let go. The guardian ad litem arrived that Thursday afternoon, a woman named Donna, in a navy coat, clipboard in hand. She inspected the house from top to bottom, making notes, asking questions. Where does Lily keep her school projects? In the hall closet, 3rd shelf. Who helps her with homework? I do, and sometimes Mrs. Callahan at school. When she calls you Dad, how long has she been doing that? Since she was 3. Donna paused and studied me with soft, thoughtful eyes. That matters, Tom, she said, more than you think. By the time she left, she had enough evidence to fill a binder of her own. I made dinner that night, grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup. Simple, but Lily loved dipping the corners of her sandwich in the soup and declaring it fancy. She told me about school, about her friend Clara's new puppy, about a drawing she was making for the guardian ad litem. She said I can draw anything I want, Lily said. So I'm drawing you and me at the Christmas festival, the one with the popcorn machine and the ice sculptures. I swallowed hard. That was a good night. It was the best, she said, smiling big enough to show the small gap from her missing front tooth. Moments like that made everything worth it. And then, just as the week was ending, Marcy returned. It was the following Monday morning. Snow had fallen overnight, thick enough to hide the cracks in the driveway. I had just poured myself a cup of coffee when I heard a car door slam hard enough to rattle the window. Then another slam. Then rapid footsteps crunching in the snow. Then Mayuwam. Bang, bang, bang. Open this door right now, Marcy shrieked. I set my mug down, took a slow breath, and walked to the front door. When I opened it, a gust of freezing air blew in, along with the sound of her ragged breathing. Marcy stood on the porch, hair-wild coat, unbuttoned boots covered in snow. Her eyes were wide, almost frantic. You think you won, she yelled. You think this is over? Marcy, I said calmly, you don't have any legal right to be here. She pushed forward until her boots hit the threshold. That judge humiliated me in front of everyone. You ruined my life. I didn't ruin anything. I told the truth. The court did the rest. Her hands balled into fists. You stole my daughter. She isn't something to steal, I said, and you know that. For a moment, her face twisted, not in anger, but in something that looked a little like fear, or maybe recognition. Then just as quickly, she shoved the feeling away. You think you're a hero, she hissed. You're nothing, nothing. Behind her, a car idled in the driveway. When I looked past her, I realized it wasn't her usual SUV. It was her ex-husband's truck. And sitting in the driver's seat, watching with folded arms, was Rick. He didn't get out. He didn't wave. He didn't even look at her. Just stared stone cold still. That's when I knew something had shifted. Marcy turned and followed my gaze. You can leave now, she snapped at him. He didn't roll down the window. He didn't acknowledge her at all. He put the truck in reverse, backed out of the driveway, and drove off without a word. Marcy spun back to me, eyes blazing. He's a coward, she said. A pathetic coward. You and him both. I held the door. For your sake, I said quietly, you should go. She let out a strangled scream, pure frustration, pure collapse, and stomped back into the snow. She slipped once on the ice, caught herself, and kept going, muttering curses under her breath as she disappeared down the sidewalk. I closed the door behind her, the sound muffled and final. 2 hours later, I opened my email and found a message waiting for me. From Rick Daniels, subject about everything. I hesitated, then clicked. Tom, I'm done with Marcy. I didn't know about the lies. Didn't know she'd filed abandonment. Didn't know she was using Lily to punish you. After the courtroom mess, I realized I didn't want her in my life either. I'm sorry for my part in all this. Truly. For what it's worth, you're the only real father Lily has ever had. We're gonna rate him up. Rick. I let out a long breath. Not forgiveness, not friendship, but an unexpected truth from an unexpected place. That evening, as the sun set in soft orange light across the living room, Lily climbed onto the couch with something behind her back. I made you something, she said. I smiled. Yeah, what is it? She pulled out a small wooden figure, one from the old dollhouse family set. The little wooden dad. Only now she'd painted the shirt brown, like my Carhartt jacket, painted little flecks of gray into the hair, and on the base in blocky 10-year-old handwriting she'd written, Dad. She placed it in my hand. Now it looks like you, she said. I had to swallow before I could speak. It's perfect, kiddo. She leaned her head on my arm. We can fix everything now, right, Dad? I wrapped my arm around her shoulders. Yeah, I said softly, we can. Later that night, after she fell asleep, I stood by the living room window and looked out at the soft glow of the porch light reflecting off the snow. Revenge hadn't come from shouting or bitterness or getting even. It had come from letting the truth speak louder than the lies, from standing still while the person who tried to break me unraveled under her own choices, from showing up calm, steady, honest when it mattered most, and from choosing Lily every single time. If you've ever been pushed aside, lied to, or told you weren't real to the people you loved, you're not alone. And if stories like this one help you breathe a little easier, or remind you that dignity still matters in this world, well, I hope you'll stick around for the next one.